Hi everyone, welcome to the content video for Unit 3. There are so many good topics that we could choose from in this unit to talk about, but I wanted to zero in on the topic of graphic organizers. And I have a feeling this may be a topic that you feel like you're pretty familiar with. You know what graphic organizers are and how to use them, whether in your role as a student or as a teacher. But I want to focus in on why we use graphic organizers. Because of the many topics that we deal with in education, creating visual displays of information through graphic organizers it's one of the topics that there is very little debate on its value, and there is lots of research-based evidence, scientifically research-based evidence that promotes the use of graphic organizers. So I've picked out the top 9 reasons or benefits of using graphic organizers based on what we know from research. So I'll tell you a little bit about the research. The paper that I'm taking this information from, I did post in our module for this unit. You're welcome to read it. I'm going to give you a synopsis of it. The paper was written by the Institute for Advancement of Research and Education as requested by Inspiration Software. And some of you might use Inspiration Software with your students. If you are not familiar with it, it's a software that provides you with a template for creating graphic organizers. Now today there's lots of these kinds of software and apps available, but Inspiration it has been around for quite a while, and it was one of the first graphic organizer software tools that you could use with young children. So Inspiration wanted to find out, okay, what is the research there that backs up our development of Inspiration as a tool for using in classrooms? You can see that the paper I'm going to share with you comes from 2003, and I give that date because obviously in the last 12 years there has been additional research, but I'm going to show you what we know from the strongest body of research up to that date, and I don't believe that there has been much work done to refute these studies. So we still are in this idea that there is strong scientific evidence promoting the value of graphic organizers. So this paper reflects a meta-analysis, and a meta-analysis just means that it's a research study that looked at other research studies. And so the people who wrote the paper did a search of academic databases and pulled out research studies that met certain criteria, and that criteria was set by No Child Left Behind Act, and so that criteria was used to define what is scientific-based research. And typically that research focuses on experimental kinds of research studies where there are 2 groups. There's the control group and the experimental group. The control group doesn't receive this treatment and the experimental group does. And then researchers compare the results after that. And so that type of research is thought by many to be the most valid and reliable kind of research. So what you're getting here is a synopsis of the most high quality research about graphic organizers. So here's what it tells us. It tells us that attending to information in verbal and nonverbal formats makes it easier to retain and recall. And that idea stems from something called the dual coding theory, which is not critical that you know that idea, but it's this idea that if we learn something both in a verbal way and a nonverbal way, we're more likely to remember it and be able to use it later on. Graphic organizers let us do that. Even though sometimes verbal elements are a part of an organizer, you still have the physical structure of the organizer, the shapes, the lines that connect ideas that help to make that nonverbal information stick as far as when we talk about learning. Another key idea is something called schema theory. Existing networks of information, or schemas, can be linked to new knowledge. So in our brain, we have organized different schemas about different topics. And when we're learning something new, we bring in that new information, and we're more likely to remember it if we can somehow link it to what we already know. So a graphic organizer promotes this process of linking new information to what we already know through just the physical act of creating the organizer or viewing the organizer and seeing how the information is connected in one way or another. Graphic organizers are important for reducing cognitive load, which frees up more resources to learn new material based on the idea of cognitive load therapy. So cognitive load is basically how hard your brain has to work to learn something new. And when you have put some of that information down on the graphic organizer, then that frees up some space in your brain, because you don't have to remember those details because you have them there to view, frees up that space in your brain so you can fit in more new information. So an organizer basically takes some of the load off what's happening in the brain so that it can work harder and be more efficient. We did find that writing skills improve when a visual is created to map out ideas. So that makes sense, right? If you are having all these thoughts floating around in your head, you're not really sure how to get started in your writing. If you take a few minutes to sketch out or map out those thoughts, then you've just made yourself a plan and you've given yourself direction, and that helps you with moving forward in writing. And I have to say for myself, I am a huge proponent of using a graphic organizer with my writing because it makes a difference for me in being able to see where things are placed and how they work together or where I need to fill in gaps. Promoting reading comprehension and vocabulary development. And we know this from research that graphic organizers can do both. This research was actually done with a mixed, all the studies that are a part of this article come from mixed ages, elementary through high school, starting clear down at first grade and moving up through high school. And so we know that even with young readers, a graphic organizer can help them learn the meaning of new vocabulary and can also help them understand and remember what they're reading as far as reading comprehension. So when you have this visual diagram, it sets your learning up to be moving forward more smoothly. That kind of goes back to the cognitive load idea, but that's especially true with reading and vocabulary development. We also know that graphic organizers aid in providing a viable alternative to conventional note-taking methods. So if you think about the conventional note-taking methods would be things like an outline or jotting down ideas. Well, a graphic organizer gives those notes a kind of structure that focuses your thinking. So if you give students a blank graphic organizer during some kind of an activity, maybe science or social studies, or maybe you're viewing a video or looking at some other media, photo images or a website, and you're wanting students to find certain bits of information, a blank graphic organizer gives them the outline, and it focuses their attention on those things that you want them to find, rather than kind of willy-nilly thinking and trying to figure out what's important. You've given them that support to do so. It's important in developing higher order thinking skills, increasing comprehension, and organizing information specifically for English language learners and students with learning disabilities. So what this is saying is some of the research studies focused on these subgroups and found that graphic organizers particularly aided these students. Not to say that it aids these students better than the average student. It just says for these subgroups, there is a benefit. And especially the research with learning disabilities, students with learning disabilities is a little bit deeper. And some things that weren't noted in the study that I have read before is that when you integrate color into organizing ideas in a graphic organizer, then you help promote the separation of ideas, and that is especially beneficial to students with learning disabilities. Also, when you add lines that link ideas, helps the students to visually get those connections. Graphic organizers aid in promoting retention of information in science and social studies. Again, not to necessarily say That's to the exclusion of other subject areas, but in particular with science and social studies, graphic organizers help students pick out new facts and remember them. They also help with organizing information, which in science and social studies, often students will feel overwhelmed because there's so much to learn, new dates, new facts in science. And with an organizer, it helps to organize that information into a way that's easier to be remembered later on. That's what I pulled out. There are probably other things that we can find out that are benefits of graphic organizers. I'll be interested in reading your work during this unit to see if you comment on your thoughts and experiences with using graphic organizers.